Welcome to episode 43 of the Bass Shed Podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. I'd like to welcome all the new listeners to the podcast. If this is the first episode you've heard, please click subscribe to whatever platform you're listening to it on. You can also go directly to the website, thebassshed.com, and all the episodes are there as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. Feel free to leave a rating of how you feel about the show, and you can always email me at ryan@thebassshed.com. Dan Lakin, founder of Lakeland Basses. That's right, has a new company, D. Lakin Basses, and Dan has just announced a bass giveaway. The first prize and the bass he's giving away is your custom bass. So that's right. You pick the body, you pick the wood, you pick the color, you pick the electronics, etc. You talk with Dan and his design team, and he will build you your custom bass. That's first prize. Second prize is 3 Peterson strobo clip tuners. Third prize is your choice of flat wound or round wound strings by Lavella. All entries must be in by May 31st, and the winner will be chosen July 15th. Visit www.dlakenbasses.com for more info and to submit, and follow him on the social media platforms. You can get to them, his website, via the Bass Shed if you'd like, or just type in www.dlakenbasses.com at the chance to win the bass of your dreams, your custom bass by D. Lakin Basses. Right on the episode is bassist Prodaniuk. Taras has performed and recorded with Richard Thompson, Lucinda Williams, Dwight Yoakam, Steve Earle, Elvis Costello, Buck Owens, Sara Evans, Spencer Davis, EmmyLou Harris, and so many others. The way I got introduced to Taras is kind of a funny story. But I was living in this house in North Hollywood, and I was married at the time, so it was me and my ex-wife. There's a couple that lived in the guest house in the back, and then there was the point guy who we all paid rent to, and he was supposed to give the rent check to the landlord. And so there's point guy, my now ex-wife, and I, and the couple in the back. And I get a knock on the door one day, and I was like home practicing, and I opened the door, and this guy asked if the point guy was there. I'm like, no, the point guy's not here. Like, what's, can I give him a message? He's like, hi, I'm Taras. I'm the landlord. I own the place. I'm like, oh, okay. Come on in. Now, I did not know of Taras yet as a bass player. I did not know. This is how I got introduced to him as a person and as a musician, actually. And so he comes in, and my bass is out. And he asks, I believe he asked. He's like, yeah, may I? I'm like, sure. And he picks it up and he starts playing. And I'm like, all right, well, clearly this guy plays a little bit too. That's cool. And that's not to put him in check, not because what he was playing sounded poorly. I didn't know he was a pro. I just thought he was a landlord guy. And so he's playing, and we start talking about bass, and the bass that he was playing was my Lakeland, and so he tells me he knows Dan, and it kind of starts making some jokes about why I'm not playing a Fender P or something. I can't remember exactly, but it was funny. It was definitely funny. And so we kind of hit it off, and, apparently we're all paying the point guy rent. The point guy wasn't paying him. Taras was there to basically, give us the boot, which happened. We all left. So that is how I met Taras. And moving forward, we became friends. We were hanging out. He let me borrow his upright for some gigs. We were hanging at NAMM last year, and it was great to catch up with him, hang some more. And so this is my time with Taras, and the conversation you're being dropped into is him talking about the fact that I live in Venice now, and we're talking about Venice, and we're talking about some property management stuff, and how he got into that, because that's how I knew him. And then we quickly turned to talking. We talk about recording. We talk about our personal process within recording. He talks about some touring, and we talk about some gear, and we just nerd out on bass, right? That's what I do here on the podcast, is I nerd out on bass, and I definitely did that with Taras. And here's my talk with Taras Prodaniuk. Yeah, I mean, it's Venice, so like woke up to like a picture of a Chinese takeout container with a syringe in it that was on the front steps. So I'm like, all right, I'll put on some gloves and go throw that away. Which that by itself should just be the emblem of the West Side is Chinese takeout and syringes. That pretty much sums it all up.
That's great.
Yeah,
Fucking great, Ryan.
I gotta call Bravo and pitch him the idea. Just the real douchebags of Venice. I'm gonna make a killing off this. Roy, what got you into the property thing? Just turning tour money into something a little bit more sustainable?
First house was in '84, and then it I bought it for like 60, I think.
Oh wow!
And but it was like kind of like farther north in North Hollywood. It was like Victory and Whitsett.
Okay.
South, north of Victory, and around there. And it's kind of like it's cool, dodgy, and it was a cool little place. It was small. It was only maybe 1,200, 1,400 square feet.
Okay.
2-bedroom, 1 bath, blah blah blah. But it was a great starter, so I bought it for like 60, and then 4 years later, I sold it for 160 or 180. I think I sold it for 160. Which if I would have waited, I probably could, because I sold it right away. I should have, I didn't have like a really swift, and it was 88, and it was before, people got into really gouging. And then I bought the North Hollywood house, and then we sold that place, and I thought like, wow, you can really make money doing this. And then we bought the North Hollywood house with the guest house in the back, and we were pretty content there. And then we got into the horse thing, and we were when we got into the horse thing, you just need more property, and we were, and I started, crunching numbers, and I would have, and that, it had the guest house in the back, and I would on and off, either I'd use it for my studio for a while, and then I'd move all my stuff out. And then I'd get a tenant for a while, and then that would pass, and I'd take the room back. It was kind of on and off. So I was aware of what I could pull with that. But then Wanda and I started thinking about, doing the ranch thing. And it was pretty much just happenstance where we had 2 horses. We had bought 2 horses, and we were keeping them this place called Gibson Ranch in Sunland. And we were there for about a year and a half, and we were driving from North Hollywood, so it was like a 20 to 30-minute drive each way, which is not bad. People drive an hour, 2 hours, go and see their horses, but we were doing it every day. And then I started crunching the numbers, and I remember we went riding on a Sunday, and we were heading back, and there was an open house just right around the corner from where the stables were. And so we got thinking about it, and I called my my broker, my real estate guy, and Kent was the one that sold us the Beck house, and he said, well, if you guys want to find a horse, we went and looked at the house, and he kind of gave us his opinion, and he said, if you guys want to find horse property, you guys need to find this place, Riverwood Ranch. And so we're like, Riverwood Ranch? I've never heard of it. And so I ended up talking to some a gal that had a horse at the stable, and she goes, oh, Riverwood Ranch, there's only like 32 homes up there. It's pretty exclusive. And I'm like, huh. And he took us up here, and it was pretty wild. And then oddly enough, about a week goes by, and he calls me up and says, we got to go and take a look at a house. There's a house that's up for sale up in Riverwood at the ranch. So we ended up going up here, and I love the neighborhood. I love the I loved everything. We weren't really in love with the house. It was kind of like a Swiss chalet kind of vibe, but it was on 2.5 acres in Los Angeles,
Right.
and it was affordable. I think I wanted to say it was affordable for 2006, 2005. And so we bought it. And then it was kind of like, do we keep Beck or do we sell it? So we ended up, many times I've wanted to off it, but, my wife Wanda wants to, we keep it.
Yeah. Man, so what's been going on? How you been since the last time we talked?
Good. Did a couple sessions, some stuff at home. Man, I had this Ampeg mic pre that I'm just all over that I got from Ted Kornblum when he was working for St. Louis Music. And Ampeg discontinued making it. But I use it at home, and then I used it all the time, and it just sounds, with any bass, it sounds huge, and it sounds so tubey and so, so cool. So
a friend of mine who's playing fiddle on the road with Big and Rich, he was using one on his violin, and I remember he texted me from Nashville. He's like, dude, you got to check these things out, like these Ampeg tube DIs.
Well, these
things are amazing.
But they had a DI. I have a DI, and they also had a mic pre. See, the mic pre. Now, what the mic pre does, the DI is like pretty. It's really it's pretty basic. You just plug in. There's no, and you can just do tube, initiate the tube, and or cut, I think, like a 25 dB cut, if it's too hot, if you got an active instrument or something like that. But it's pretty pedestrian, but it sounds fantastic as well. But then I had this mic pre, what it allows you to do, it's got two 12AX7s in it, but allows you to it's got a gain. And so you can really gain the unit. And so you can overdrive. It's like you can overdrive the unit and then put the pad in, so you can either get it really fuzzy or slightly fuzzy. You can kind of control the hair on it, which is kind of cool, for certain things.
Sure.
So I was just loving it.
Were you producing those records, or
no, just pulling cable, playing bass.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your preferred session experience? Do you like going in not knowing the tune? Do you like to get a track in advance to work out a part? Do you like when the producer gives you notes about what their vision for the bass is? Like, what's your preferred scenario?
If they can send me if I get the MP3s in advance, that I can play through, make charts if necessary, and then kind of get a thing. There's certain depending factors. Like when I work for Eric, he's got pretty specific ideas what the bass, what he wants the bass to do. So he'll send me like a demo, and Eric writes all the, like for Sugar Ray, he wrote most of the, he wrote the record, and then so he'll like send me a demo of the tune and with him singing it. And he plays bass on guitar, so it's like the bass. They'll be like riffs, and it's kind of funny because it's got that. It's he's a guitar player, so guitar players love pull-offs.
Yeah.
And of course, pull-offs on bass are like a whole different. It's a whole different bag of tricks. Those are bigger muscles. So
you're moving more string.
Yeah, you're moving a little bit more mass. So he does a lot of that. So a lot of times it's like, can you get that little pull off? The way I'm doing. I'm like, okay, sure, no problem. So it's like, and in ways that's cool because it kind of gets your brain thinking like you normally wouldn't think.
Right.
And then so the parts are really good. So it's like, it's cool. And then you kind of all then you're allowed to there's suggestions I'll make for like a verse or B section. Like, how about if I do this here? I hear something else, and he's always really amiable to that. So that's cool.
Oh, cool.
But then the other thing is, which is a lot of fun. If you got the players and you got the songs, would be to like when we did Lucinda's record. This was actually really cool. I think this was 2002. We were at the Alley, and we had just done like a little rehearsal because we were thinking of stripping down the band, because we had 2 guitar players, Lucinda, and a keyboard player. The band was pretty big, so we stripped,
right.
We lost one of the guitar players and we lost the keyboard player, and so we were at the Alley, and so we played some of the tunes down, and we kind of like thought, this works, this is great.
Yeah.
And then she goes, well, I wrote some songs, and she just started so we started playing these songs down, like just cold.
Okay.
She just kind of she'd play it, and we'd kind of join in and kind of, because it was Doug, Pettibone, Lucinda, myself, and Jimmy Christie, and they're all good musicians, and it was like breathing. It was just like, it was cake. It was just very easy, and and there was no pressure of being in the studio. We were just at the Alley, and I had a friend of mine just come to record, and just run it to a CD and just burn it. And some of that stuff, if had it been where you could have put it on a record, would have been, they were perfect. They were, they were great tracks. But anyway, what we ended up doing, so I think there were 10 or 12 tunes that we kind of worked in 2 or 3 days. And we ended up going on the road, like doing secondary markets. And we got to play all those tunes. For like 3-4 weeks, and then keys, tempos, and kind of play with it a little bit. And so we came in, and Mark Howard was producing, and we were working at the Paramore studio in Silver Lake. And what that was basically, I think it was a monastery, or like, and it's a Spanish style compound, with multiple buildings and this huge dining.
Where is that? I'm trying to picture it.
It's off of Silver Lake Boulevard, and it starts with an M. Montpelier or something like that. And if you just go up the hill, and it's on the top of the hill.
Kind of over by the stadium?
Yeah, kind of in that area. Truthfully, Rye, I can't remember. I just remember it was in Silver Lake, and driving there, getting off Los Feliz and getting down Silver Lake.
That whole area confuses me. Like, I've been here, since 2006, and there's still parts of town that I completely get lost in every time, and Silver Lake's one of them.
Well, thank God for GPS.
Man, when I moved here, you're absolutely right. When I moved here, it was like just MapQuest, and I was like printing out all these pages,
I know.
3 pages, just going through, printer cartridges, like 2 a week, trying to get to rehearsals and gigs.
Yeah.
It was nuts.
Yeah, I know. Well, before that was the Thomas Guide, and you were, well, how did you get there?
Yeah.
Can you just give me the, how do I tell? Yeah. But that's when.
I did that too. You had to stop over at an Arco and just thumb through the Thomas Guide.
Yeah.
And nobody knew anything. Like, these people that were like, when I first got here, I'm like, does anybody in LA know about LA at all? Because nobody knew anything about directions.
Yeah, it's like you stop at 7-Eleven. Excuse me, do you know, is the 405 freeway down the street? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. Right. And you're right by the 405. Like, it's going right behind the 7-Eleven, and they don't know.
I don't know. It's like, it's the weirdest thing. And that's LA, man. Yeah. No one's really, I don't know. I like to think that because of the world being as divisive as it is now, that people are trying to be a little bit more warm and fuzzy than there are more acts of kindness that you encounter as opposed to people being mean and
sure, dismissive. Yeah. I would hope so. I think it's.
I don't know, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's highlighted wherever they're normally at. If they're a nice person, they're probably going to be a little nicer.
Yeah.
If they're an a-hole, then there's just going to be a little bit more.
Yeah, there's going to be more hair on it.
Yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, we're working. Mark Howard was producing this Lucinda record, so we go in, and they're dropping the dime on this thing where it's going to be catered every night. You're just going to go in, and all you got to do is cut one song a day.
Okay.
And
now why just one? Why not
I don't know.
If the mojo is happening, why not get it 2 or 3 and just maximize the
I hear you, Ryan.
Yeah. Not your
I'm
call.
Just a bass player.
It's above your pay grade.
Yeah, exactly. I just pull cable. So we show up, and the first or second pass, it's like we got it. And same thing, we got everything in the first or second pass. Because we'd been playing, we just came off the road for a week, and then we were immediately into the studio. So it was within 2 weeks, the record predominantly was done. Maybe some guitar overdubs, and that was it, and then some vocals and stuff. So that thing just fell really easy.
And which record of hers was this?
That was World Without Tears.
Okay.
And that's what I did. I got hip to this thing. I hope it's true. Somebody told me, I think it might have been Dan Lakin told me this, that when Pino did the D'Angelo record,
yeah,
how the bass, the bass, I mean, it's Pino, so it's that, but how the bass sounds kind of funny, and it's mixed kind of weird, but you can tell he's doing this thing. What he did was tune his bass down to C sharp.
I remember reading an article about that recording process when that record came out. That record's old, like 2000 or 98.
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite records. And I remember reading about his rig, but that's very possible that he tuned his bass down to get like all that really flabby.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
And
right.
and so I ended up doing it on this on a Lou track, and it was pretty cool. I mean, it wasn't something I just, why did I do it? Why? Because the tune was in D, so I just tuned the whole bass down to C sharp and played it in the first position. So it was like I was playing in F. So it was cool. The bass had a thing, and it had a little bit more of a rubbery thing. But it was not something that, let me put it this way, I haven't done it since. So that kind of stuff. I guess what the deal with it was that I had to get I had a 62P bass that I had that was pretty stock. It had been refinished. And it was okay. It was a good P. But I put those, the Labella telephone cables, the regular flat ones on it.
Yeah.
But what I needed was a bass that could handle dropping down that low without fretting out.
Right.
And so I could get just even a little bit of bow, just so it wasn't too straight. And that bass did it. It was ended up pretty cool. But once again, I just didn't. It ended up, I didn't have a use for it. Let me put that way, it didn't come into my mind to ever do it again.
Right. Something tells me, like, I think, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think Pino probably did that live. I think
no,
probably
no,
just
I think it was just
studio
a studio thing. But I ended up, when we did the tune with Lou, I did it out. I brought it out, and did that whole bit.
Yeah.
So that was that. But it was, that in that realm, recording like that, if you have that kind of parameter to work with and that kind of budget, that's great. But then then the other thing is like coming in and they just kind of show you like, okay, this is the take. This is kind of the vibe we want for this song. Here's a rough singer-songwriter demo with just the guy playing guitar, or the guy shows you the guitar thing, and then you kind of work it up from scratch, and then you kind of get a vibe while you're all doing it at one time.
Right.
But then, it takes more time.
Yeah, it does. And another thing I've learned from just doing sessions and different scenarios you walk into is younger guys,
mm-hmm.
Like my age and younger, they I have to do take after take after take, and I have like a whole playlist that's just safeties, you know. And in my mind, I know that like the first or second take was
the deal. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's not gonna get any better. Like it was fresh,
yeah.
it was responsive, it was creative, and I believed in it. Now I'm trying to duplicate something.
Yeah, or else you're trying to take it slightly different, where you're kind of trying to create maybe a little bit of the magic, something that's slightly different that's usable.
Right. And so like younger guys have me do take after take after take, and then I remember the record I did with now I'm blanking on his name, Jeff Emmerich.
Okay.
Who engineered the Beatles.
Yeah.
You know, like the record I did with him that he was producing, like one take was good.
Yeah.
He's just like, yeah.
It's great.
Like older guys there's more freedom with the older guys.
That's interesting.
Because they know it's about the magic. It's not about what it looks like in Pro Tools.
Yeah, I hear you.
And they're listening for that magic. And once they hear that and feel that, then it's good. Whereas I think younger guys they're caught up in what it is digitally and how it is in the box and how they're going to chop it up and blah, 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 blah. I'm sure you experienced that too, just dealing with engineers and producers from different backgrounds.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I like to give them like, you know, it's kind of funny. It's an odd thing because it's like you do the first one, you're like, oh, that's some pretty good stuff. And then, all right, give me another one. So you do another one, then you're like, oh, there's some really good stuff on that one. And then you're like thinking, and the guy goes, well, I think we got it. And then you're like, are you sure?
Yeah.
And then like thinking, well, you know what? Give me another one, and just so I can just kind of like let it loose a little bit more, and maybe you'll just get something. I'll play something brilliant I can play something cool that you'll like, you know.
Yeah.
And then, but do you find, you know, when you do remote sessions, when people call you for tracks and stuff?
The last one I did of those was for some. They released the track on Inauguration Day. It's this guy up in the Bay Area that used to call me for gigs down here. And he put together a really great LA band. And he sent me a demo with the verse, or with like a MIDI melody line, basically, and MIDI drums.
Okay.
And I'm just like, dude, can I please have the take of the real drums? And the drummer on it was a good friend of mine, and I know how that guy plays really well.
Yeah.
And his thing is really specific. Like, he lays back his kick and his snare, and the hats are down the middle. Mm-hmm. Like, every time I play with this drummer, I got to recalibrate a little bit because I know how he plays.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, send me the the real drum track. Yeah. Well, I'm still waiting on it. I'm still waiting. Just cut to MIDI. I'm like, all right. And I kind of hate doing the remote thing because I'll come up with a part. If I have no direction, I'll come up with a part, send it off. Cool, I want more of this. All right, fine, let me do another take. Send him that. I want more of that. Ugh.
Yeah.
Send it back. So I think that's actually, I mean, that could be in the studio too, just people not having a vision for it.
Yeah, I know.
Until you play something, then it ignites their creative. I mean, he wanted like all these really big bass fills in it and kind of as if I was overplaying and stuff. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but you know, I find it, because I find that's like a really fine line in my mind of like groove, taste, and overplaying, and I always go for less, and like, do you find that, let's say when you're doing, you're in the session, you're in the studio, full Monty, you know, the old days, and with the drummer in the sectioning, and you do it, and you're like, and you got a decent headphone mix, and you kind of, you kind of lay it down, and but you're not taking a lot of chances. You're just kind of like trying to, nail the carpet. You're nailing the drywall on the
right. Yeah, exactly.
And then, and then it was like, and it's a funny thing in your mind, because you're sitting there thinking, it was like, well, that track's good. That's money. And then there's another part of your brain saying, yeah, but you pretty much played it really safe, and you probably could have taken more chances with it now that you have it, now that the board is nailed into the wall, you could do it again. And so, and then And I find that people are most, I mean, if there's a way you want to clear out a tracking room or you're in the control room, is do bass overdubs.
Right.
So, and it's always like a real catchy thing with me, because if we're kind of moving along, it's like, okay, let's go to the next tune. We got to kind of, we want to get 3 today. So there's always I always have that speed bump in my head of like, you know what, give me another pass. Let me just do another take on it and get it, because I think I can get it better. And generally, I'd say, I don't know, maybe 60-40. It's always better the second time around when I'm just tracking. I can turn all the other stuff down where I know where the song is going, and I just have the drums and I can lock it in and just kind of feel it a little bit more.
Yeah, I like having as much information as possible. So like if there's a guitar hook, like I want the guitar in there. Like I want all this stuff in there so I know exactly where my space is.
But then when you're tracking it, you just kind of like, for my mix, when I want to hear it, it was like, okay, I just want a very minute amount of vocal, a little bit keyboards, a little bit of guitar, a lot of drum, and a lot of bass. That's it. That's like, give me bass guitar mix,
Right.
And so, it's funny, the head trips you kind of go through it, because it's like, there's a part of you thinking, it's like, well, I'm a first take studio guy, and you do the first take, and it's like, okay, that's pretty lukewarm, but they like it, so all right, let's move on.
Yeah. But even the session guys I know that are completely one take guys, the part is pristine, but it lacks something.
Yeah.
The part is, they nailed it. Yeah. They nailed it first take, moving on. And I think it wasn't until I got to hang on a session one time with Steve Gadd and watch Steve.
Oh, Jesus.
Watch Gadd track, because I went in there, and this was back in Arizona. I went into the studio thinking like, this is going to take 8 minutes, long enough for him to sit down and just blaze through this track, one take, and everybody will go home. But watching him work in the studio completely reconfigured my thing about how to approach sessions. I mean, he worked out a part for about 2.5 hours, and then went through and tracked his whole drum set without cymbals, and then went in and just put in cymbals.
Wow. Was that a Gadd thing, or was it the producer engineer?
That was a Gadd thing. So the record company was the guitar player for Tool.
Oh God.
And so they got, the talent was these 2 guys from Boston. I forgot their names. And the record company was like, what drummer do you want on this? And they're both like, Steve Gadd, of course. And they're like, okay, we'll get Steve Gadd. So they called Gadd. Gadd was there for like a day, called his wife, Carol. Like, man, you got to check this place out. Phoenix is amazing. They bought a house while they were there doing this record. So now Gadd lives in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And that was the session that he moved to Phoenix. Like, that was then.
Yeah.
Maybe 2007.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And so he was kind of running the show. Like, the engineer was just like, all right, you're Steve Gadd, do your thing.
So what was Gadd playing to?
He was playing to guitar and vocal scratch.
Okay.
And playing through it, working out a part. And the part was very, very similar to a track he did on a James Taylor record called October Road.
Yeah.
It's it's a Gadd Brushes thing. It is very similar to the track that he played on October Road, the song.
Wow.
And then he goes back in, and he comes into the control room, and he's hanging. He's like, yeah, man, I'll call the bass player in here tomorrow. And the engineer's like, who? He's like, I don't know. Let me see if Tony Levin's available. So I think Levin was coming in the next day.
Wow.
And I definitely wanted to go back to hang and like meet Tony. Didn't work out, but watching a studio legend track, and everything was so meticulous, and it wasn't the egotistical show up, one take, I'm out. Like he was there. He was there mentally, and he was invested, and that changed my whole thing about the studio.
Wow.
Experience from a player side. Like, if that's what Gadd's doing,
Yeah, I better ratchet up my stuff.
Yeah, then for like local LA singer songwriter girl, like I could probably give it a little bit more time too.
Yeah, I know.
But it was very cool though to see, and it's a great experience.
Wow, that's incredible. But how was it? Was the tune good?
I don't remember. Who knows?
Okay.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, no. I mean, maybe I don't know. Like I don't.
And it was Gad just played on one song.
I think he did the whole record, but I was there for maybe like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours.
I dig.
And it was just that song that night.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't remember their name. I don't know what happened to the record. I didn't follow up on any of that.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like something I'd be into musically.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating. Fascinating. When you were doing Dwight's records, did you do those out in LA, or did you go back to Nashville to cut those?
No, the way that worked, we would cut it at Capitol. First, initially, when I got on the band in '87.
Yeah.
And I did the first record was Buenas Noches from the Lonely Room, and that was '88. And we rehearsed for a week, and then we went into Capitol C, and Pete Anderson had a real definitive way of recording where we would all track, right? All skate. Yeah. And then he'd strip it. And this is pre-Pro Tools, so this would have been '88. So, and he strips everything back down to the drums. And he puts up the click with the drums to see if it's moving, and then they get a bass, get a drum track. That's all he's looking for the first time.
Okay.
And for the first, so we'll cut, how do we do it? Within 2 or 3 days, we'd cut the whole record. But all we were searching for is get drum tracks.
Yeah.
And then I'd have 2 days and I'd do all the basses.
Okay. That's a pretty relaxed pace.
Yeah. It was relaxed, but it was like 12 songs in 2 days. That's
got some tempo to it.
It's got some tempo to it. Yeah. And it wasn't like there was, and plus I was really, I was a neophyte. I was like a whole new thing for me, especially at Capitol. I was like, wow.
Sure.
And
is this your first time tracking at Capitol?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was otherworldly. It was incredible.
Sure.
And I learned a lot. And especially on that gig. And basically that was the scenario we did with Dwight till about 93, when we did, I think it was 92 or 93, we did, what was that? Caught in a Trap, the Elvis.
Oh, yeah. The Elvis makeover, yeah.
And that was, we made that for Leaving Las Vegas. I was Leaving Las Vegas, I think.
Or the Nick Cage movie?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That was it. And it was with all the Elvises. And no, I'm thinking of all the Elvises and the guys, all these Elvis impersonators in parachutes dropping into Vegas. I can't think of the name of the tune. It's not Leaving Las Vegas because he plays an alcoholic.
Viva. Wasn't it just Viva Las Vegas?
Maybe so. I don't remember. It was.
I remember the trailer from that.
Yeah.
They're all parachuting. All the Elvises were parachuting.
Right. All the Elvis impersonators.
Yeah.
So, but that one we did at the Sound Factory, and that was the first one where we did the Pro Tools thing. That was like introduction for Pete, for Anderson to, it was like the monkey in space for Pro Tools. And that track actually came out. It was a lot of fun to play to because Jeff Donovan played the drum track. I think he played it, or maybe they just did the did a program, the drums. I can't remember. I think he played it, but I tracked to it, and it was just like, it's like, oh, you're not, it's perfect.
Yeah.
So it's not like, okay, I got to slow down. I got to kind of feel it. He kind of drops it here. I got to back it off. It was just, and it was pretty much straight eights. And I kind of tried to cop. It wasn't Jerry Sheff that played on that track. it was another guy that played bass on that track, on Elvis's track. And I try to kind of cop some of that stuff, yet kind of make a little bit more rocky, a little straight ahead. Yeah. And we cut it, but it was a lot of fun. And so in the following year, in '93, when we did what was it? What was Dwight's big record? With Fast As You, all that. I
remember playing all those songs.
Yeah.
Fireman, was that his? Did he write that, or is that a country standard?
No, that's
Fireman.
His.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Dwight wrote that one. That's his. Well, anyway, so when we did that, then we were at Capitol doing the entire. It was all Pro Tool stuff, and so we did some wacky stuff on that record, and it was This Time.
Okay.
That was the record that we did, and it was it's all Pro Tools and everything's perfect.
Yeah.
And it was cool. And then it was actually it was a lot of fun because I being an owner of an upright, wasn't quite, I didn't feel quite comfortable. And they called Chuck DeMonico in. Chuck came in and played. And he just played like these huge notes.
Okay.
I mean, I probably could have done it, but I was, hire a professional, for Christ.
Yeah.
And so Chuck did it, and he, it sounded incredible. And then they ended up putting a string section on, I think, one of the tunes on that record, and I got to watch that. That was at Capitol. I think they might have done that at Capitol in the big room in A.
Okay.
With a string section, and it was the guy that did the strings for Elton John stuff.
Oh wow. The arranger or conductor?
Yeah, the arranger. Yeah. It's names of the tip. I like that did Tumbleweed Connection and all that stuff. And it was phenomenal. It was great. It was awesome to watch.
Yeah. How was that the technology of Pro Tools hitting? Like I've never been in a session where Pro Tools did not exist. So when that kind of market or an industry standard shifted into going into Pro Tools and digital, how is that received? Were some guys still old world about it? Like, nah, I'm not touching the technology. Did everybody jump right on it? Like, what was that shift like?
I think I'd say a majority of players, engineers, professionals just went along with it because it just made life easier.
Yeah.
But there are, I'd say maybe 10% that I have friends that, they still, I got to record the tape.
Right. There's always going to be those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, I love to play, and this is just what it is. And it's, I can't tell you how many times you're at a session and you're doing a song and you're really killing, you're busting your hump trying to get it down, and then you sort of get it, or you get it, and it's like, that would have been really cool if we could have played that, play that section longer for another 8 bars, right. Or let's say if he didn't put that drum fill, we cut that, where you can chop. I know, you can chop tape, right? There was that whole art of chopping tape. Which is it's like open heart surgery when you watch them actually do it.
I've never seen it done. I would like to. I mean, that seems like
it's pretty wild, man.
Yeah,
where they're actually cutting the tape with a razor blade,
right?
And so, but it just allows you to just make all these moves, and it just makes life easier.
It does. Yeah.
And then let's say you've got a drummer that's not up to snuff, but the artist loves this guy and thinks he's in these bees. You can make him sound good.
Right. That's what I think about it all. Is like the technology thing. You can auto tune a singer. You can time align a drummer.
Right.
You can. I feel like the talent level has probably
decreased.
I think so. I mean, it doesn't. Also, because it's so regular, anybody can make a shit record now. Whereas, like, back in the day, not everybody had a home studio, too. So a crappy singer who wanted to sing wasn't making a record.
No.
Now that person can make a record.
unless they have money and it's like a boutique type of thing, where it's like a boutique record, it's like, okay,
right,
this guy's a restaurateur and his girlfriend is this lead singer. She thinks
yeah, exactly.
and you do these
she
awful
just wants to feel pretty, and he's gonna throw money at it.
And you make it, you make $1,200, so it's just,
sure.
All right. I'm a happy camper.
Yeah.
But it's like, I have to share with you. There's a studio that a gentleman named Chuck Kavorik, who used to work at Westlake Audio, and Chuck ended up. I think he inherited. He bought the place that had it, and fortunately, he's like 5 minutes from me, up at here in Sunland, and he has a studio, and it used to be Ambrosia's studio.
Okay.
And and he's like a total tape junkie.
Yeah.
And I got to share, you'll do a track, and there's something, there's like tape compression that, it's just, you listen back to it, and there's a magic to it that digital is perfect. It's perfect, but tape, and it's funny because you'll like play it and you're going, there was a mistake on the 30th bar, and you kind of listen once and you're like, oh, you hear that? And then you play it again. And then you listen to it again. You're like, oh, play it again. And, and then you're like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Right. I don't mind the fret noise or whatever.
Yeah.
Little flub it is. Yeah.
And it kind of like there's like this melting of a sonic meltdown that it just kind of, it's like the tape compression. That's all I can say. And it's just, it's otherworldly, but then it kind of it kind of messes with your psyche, because you sit there just like, okay, let's do this track. All right. And then you just go, yeah, Chuck, just punch me in at the top of, punch me in right at the top of the thing. And he goes, well, let me see where I can get out. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
So it was like, you'd have to go through the process. And I remember doing engineers that where they could punch in and out. They would, it was like money, they got the in, got the out. They're like, we got to play that again. I punched it out too late. You got to catch that note. So, the punching in was easy. The punching out was always kind of tenuous.
Did you ever work with Michael Stone?
No.
At the record plant?
No.
Oh, okay. He was the brother of the dude that owned the record plant.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a super cool guy he was an engineer and super cool to work with, and great with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Only on tape, but again, the older generation, he never touched Pro Tools.
Really?
And the digital thing, yeah. But he was, he's like, writing compressors in real time as you're tracking, and he's that guy. And it's, I love that stuff, man. I like. It seems like there was more of an art to it then, and a more real, like they were a musician in the mix of making music with you. Yeah. They're on stage with you, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. It's changed. It's I don't know if it's just changed. I don't know if it's for better or for worse. Just different. Yeah. There's plus minuses. I mean, you can talk, for years on this.
Right. Yeah. It's basically, and the talking points is it's different.
The
input is different and the output is different. And now, if you like the difference, cool. If you don't, well then, cool.
Yeah, but then you got to think that it's like, if let's say Pro Tools never happened, we wouldn't be sitting here with,
right. This wouldn't be happening. Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't have rigs at home, and we're like, just send me the track, I'll play and I'll send it to you. You know what I mean?
Do you do a lot of that? Do you do a lot of remote stuff?
Yeah, a good bit. Sometimes I'll just get a batch of it. It just keeps coming, and then you kind of go into the desert and nothing's happening, and then
right.
all of a sudden it starts happening again. But it's kind of it's good, because let's say you're working on a project, you cut something, and it's like, he sang it, and it's in the key's too high. It's like, okay, just send me the track.
Yeah.
And it's like you just redo it, and bam, it's done.
Yeah, what's your home rig? What are you working with for the home rig?
I got a Pro Tools. I think it's Pro Tools 11.
Okay.
And I used to have an old Digio 2 for my interface, and then I use I think it's called a Studio Pro microphone. It's like a 47.
Yeah.
And I'll use that for the upright. Upright. It's hard because you got to, it's like you can't do it on your own. You got to have somebody in there because running back and forth, it's like you pulled your hair out of your head.
Oh yeah, to the control room and back.
Yeah. It's hard. At least I haven't. I'm sure there's somebody like, dude, you should just do this. I'm sure there's some quick way of doing it that I'm not seeing, but at this moment, that's what it's working. And then I got that I mentioned before, that SVT mic pre. But I had heard, speaking of that there's a guy, there's a guy or a company in Nashville that is making those mic pre's still.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's all the guts, because Ampeg got sold like 2 or 3 years ago, right? To Line 6,
right. Not to Line 6. I think it was a Northwest company. When St. Louis opened, it was the same company that owned Mackie.
Okay.
And it was, I can't think of it. And it was, they were out of Washington, Seattle area. And then I think then Ampeg was shipped off and they started making their stuff in Vietnam.
Okay.
Because I remember Bob Dixon, I remember some of the amps coming through and I would see like 12 SVT heads and still new in boxes.
Yeah.
And Bob would say, "Oh, I got to go through all these for Ampeg because these were made in Vietnam and they, these are artist ones. And so they got to be gone through."
Oh.
So at first it was a little on the questionable side, but truth be, Dino, the Ampeg rep, and I have an Ampeg endorsement. They were on my last Richard tour. I went out and we toured. I think it was in 2019, and we toured Europe and then we toured the States. So when we toured Europe, they got me a classic SVT. It's a classic VR head.
Yeah.
And that rig sounded like Godhead. Unbelievable. It sounded incredible because I have an SVT Pro 2. So when we started rehearsals at Henry's, which is the place in London, which is like SIR in London.
Okay.
And we rehearsed there for like 3 or 4, I think about 3-4 days. I can't remember. And that's where we got the backlight from. And I couldn't find a SVT Pro 2 that worked because all of them would work. And then they just kind of like, they were tired. They were beaten up. And they just continued this. So there isn't any new ones. Yeah. So I started out with an SVT Pro 2 and then it went down. And fortunately, we were playing a theater somewhere in the UK where they had an SVT, a VR as their backline. So I ended up using the VR head because my Pro 2 took a shit. So, and then from that point on, from Henry's, I got a VR head. And then we came to the States and I contacted Dino, the Ampeg rep. And I said, Dino, can I get a VR rig, for mates and just use it for this tour? And they supplied it, and it was great. I didn't even have to bring my stuff out. And
what was the cab?
8. Oh, there's only one 8x10.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. So it's that thing, for a trio, it's perfect.
Sure.
Because I needed to push a lot of air because I've tried using like a 410 box. I had with my SVT Pro 2, I had a Epiphany cabinet, 410 cabinet that Dan hooked me up with.
Yeah.
I loved it. The only problem was when I came home, I mean, it's lighter than the SVT, but it's still, I couldn't wrangle it alone. Right. And so for my in-town stuff, I just use like a 15 box with a dual Showman head.
Okay. Then there's something about the wiring in the Ampegs. Like they have it's a very specific sound that is perfect for a lot of things.
Right.
and then like the complete wrong sound for other things. And I don't know how it's actually created. And part of my brain wants to know what it is, what they're using, like the whole circuitry that gives it that sound. It's that really kind of hard, in your face, unforgiving. I don't feel like they ever really got the mids right. Like I can't really shape the mids. I can't ever really shape the mids right on an Ampeg.
What are you missing on it? Are you missing the point?
I'm missing like the growl I can get off an Aguilar. Like there's a growl I can get out of an Aguilar that I just can't get for some reason. It's like this punchy, growly, right around like 350, 400.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like I was going to say around 400, between 200 and 400.
Yeah, it's right in there. Like I just can't get it to pop. Get that punchy, growly thing. I've never been able to get it. I've just never been able to get it.
On the SVT, the SVT. What I liked about the SVT Pro 2 was that it had a graphic.
Ah, yeah.
So it allowed you to, if you got into a situation where you were just like, man, I'm playing this weird room and I can't get this, I'm not getting a certain frequency. It allowed you to, to hone in on it. Because it had the graphic, and then plus it had on the graphic it had a volume, like a level control, so you could bring the graphic in less, more. And what I like about their graphic was like, you could just pretty much go across the board and you can hear where it kicked in, where you were cutting. Right. So that was what I liked about it, and I would kind of get a setting tone wise, and it had it was like on the mid range it had not a baritone, but they were notched. For the mid range was notched, and then you could boost or cut.
Right. So are you talking about like I remember, was that the one with the buttons where you could do like a, basically like a high pass, low pass, or like mid bump or something?
Yeah,
one of them has presets, and then there's another Ampeg that has the knob.
Yeah.
With like 8 different mid selectors that all kind of sound the same to me.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, you gotta, they're like, they're the Ampeg, the 2 space head, like a BR2 or something like that.
Yeah.
They're awful. I'm sorry. Yeah. I mean, they're not. I have. It was like if I go to a job and it's there, it's like, okay, I'll do it and I'll make my money and I'll leave. But it's not my favorite rig to play through it. I've used them before and they're awful. But I pretty much will stick with, if they have like one of the high ends, like the Pro 2 or a Pro 4, anything that's got tubes in it, it's got to have tubes in, or else I ain't using it.
Right.
That's just kind of my Ampeg wherewithal. There's some of the solid state heads. I just don't. It's comparable to using a GK. Some of the GK stuff is really good. And
I like GK electronics, but I don't like GK cabs. GK cabs suck.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the cabs. I do have the 2001, like they're it's like the 300 watt head. And it sounds fairly warm, and it once again, it's solid state.
Is that the Backline series?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And it's real. What I like about it, it's like you can beat the P line out of it, and it works.
Right.
They're like really workhorse. Where an Ampeg, if you don't have a new Ampeg out and you've got an older one out, it's just gonna be you're gonna be hitting the top of it if it starts making noise. You know what I mean?
Right, slapping it on the side, waiting for channel 5 to come in like an old TV.
Yeah, and it's gonna be like you can hear like, and then you hit it, and it's like, okay, it's fixed.
I've never owned one. Most of my experience with Ampeg has been through either backlines at clubs or rehearsal spots.
Yeah.
I've never owned one.
Yeah.
But part of that is because like I've never, like doubling. I want one amp basically, and I don't think it works great on the upright.
No, well, that's not a good thing. A GK is a better one for an upright.
I I like it. I'm not super in love with.
Do you got an Epiphany cab or an Epiphany head?
Epiphany cab.
What is it? The 115, 212s? What do you got?
I got the ultralight 12.
And is that with two of them or just one?
No,
12?
just one. Yeah, I don't want to bring two. Like for local gigs. Like I don't want to bring two. Like
And did you notice the difference when you got between the ultralight and just the regular cab? The regular.
I haven't really spent. I never played the 12 that was not the ultralight.
Okay.
But I did A/B it. This ultralight 12 versus like the Bergantino 12, an Aguilar 12.
Yeah.
And like I did, me and a friend of mine in town who's got a bunch of gear.
Yeah.
We just we did an amp shootout one day, like same head, same bass. Now let's check out this cab.
Yeah.
I mean, super nerd stuff.
Yeah.
But it was fun, and I heard very specific differences between the Aguilar and the Epiphany, and then we try it with the upright, and like, okay, well this cab seems to work the best for both, and because of these frequencies. But I never tried, to answer your question, I never tried the Epiphany non-ultralight.
Well, the ultra, but it's heavier.
Yeah, but and I'm sure sound wise, like it projects better because the wood's harder.
Yeah.
And you can just get more of a solid sound. Have you ever played those Schroeder cabs?
Yeah, I tried it. A friend of mine was trying to. He was trying to sell me. Wanted to know if I was interested in it, and I said, "Yeah, let me check it out." I took it to a gig, and then I was at the gig using it, and it was just a club. So I was like 20 minutes from my house, and I called my buddy who was staying at my house. I said, "Hey Tom, can you bring my GK? I mean, can you bring my bag end over here?" And so I couldn't handle it. It was just awful.
The Schroeder got fired.
Yeah, it didn't even make it made it. I think I made the one set through it, and then it was gone.
Yeah. Which one was it? Was it one with like the downward firing or the upward firing? I think it's an upward firing speaker. So there's there's a little monitoring.
Whatever it was not. I thought it was just a front-loaded 210 cabinet, and it was just loaded up on its, just like a, I didn't put it all the way down because it was just a little too much bottom, I think. I thought it was just a 210 cabinet. I'm sure it was a 210 box.
Okay.
And I hate it didn't make it.
Yeah.
and then
bag ends are great. I had one of those for a while. I like bag ends.
I love bag ends. I have two of them. I have two original ones. They're like, it's almost embarrassing because they're it's Finland birch, right? And the layers of birch, and then it's just kind of like the cabinet's starting to fall apart, is what I'm saying. And it's just got and it's one of the earlier ones, so that was before they were carpeted. So they're all just painted black.
Okay.
So it's just starting to, it just looks kind of decrepit. But I love the way it sounds. I got an EV15 in there with it, and then I use a 66, 67, 68 dual Showman head that just, it's like, wow. And
is that a speaker mod, or is that what came in it?
I would buy them. When it was, I got hip to them when I was working at Valley Arts.
Yeah.
And we always put in, and bag ends started making their, they were like, well, you could buy it with the bag end speaker. And normally we would just buy them raw, and we would just put in, I just did EV15B. And it's the money sound. The only drawback is after 2 or 3 years, the EV eventually gets kind of fuzzy.
Yeah. And
you got to get it reconed.
Okay.
I mean, you could still play it, but you
get that little distortion thing.
Yeah. And it's just like, forget about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, isn't it? I mean, what's a recone? Like $80? Like, you might as well just buy a new speaker.
I think it was. I think it was like $70 or $100.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a new speaker at that time, you could. I think, truthfully, I don't even know. I haven't ventured that. I would think it'd be like $200 or $250, brand new one.
I was actually looking at them because I think excuse me, I got to switch out the speaker in my Epiphany.
You do?
And I think so. I'm getting some kind of like weird sound, kind of like that.
You should probably. I would just call him and tell you to have him send you another speaker or another. Who did you buy it through? Dan?
No, it was all private. Like, it's my buddy who bought a couple of them. You know, he was on a cruise ship for a while and bought a bunch of gear, and I bought it off him.
Dan's buddies with that guy, with Nick.
And Dan did link me with Nick on an email, and
yeah, I'd call Nick at Epiphany and see if you can get it from him.
Yeah, it hasn't been making. I haven't had an issue with it lately, so I also don't know if it's maybe the head. You know, the head would make more sense of just carting it around. Things get loose. Maybe it's just a loose solder somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
And I don't have the. I haven't just isolated the issue yet. It could be a bad cord. Like.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah, but now I use my amp so infrequently.
Well, that should change, you know, as things start loosening up.
I think they're starting. Like, I was around a little bit last night. Heard a bunch of people playing some outdoor music in like Brentwood and stuff.
Yeah.
Is any of that happening up in the valley?
Not that I know of. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And if it did, I probably wouldn't know, unfortunately, because I'm up in the land of that time forgot up in Sunland.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, I like it up there though.
It's great. You know, there's this cool little bakery called the Backdoor Bakery that we ended up starting to play there on Saturday nights, and we would just pass the hat around, and and we play, and it's like senior hours. We start like 7:30. Play to 10.
Okay.
You're 8 to 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was just a lot of fun. It just and it's a group of guys that we play with all the time that they're like all original tunes that we're all kind of in with, that we all kind of had a bit to create.
Yeah.
And you kind of never forget them. And so we get into these kind of like not that I'm a deadhead, mind you, these kind of jams that would kind of evolve from one thing, and we go into a shuffle for some other thing, and then we slip into another tune, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Man, I used to talk to guys, and I was kind of trying to make it a reoccurring like little segment on these episodes.
Yeah.
Of just like a gnarly road story, gig story, like whatever, just something, every time any musician talks, it always starts out the same, like, one time on a gig, and then some bullshit is about to happen. What are some gig stories you got? Like one of my friends, Brian, like got punched in the back of the head, over like a can of Coke or something. Wow. I forgot the whole story in New York.
Okay, let me think.
Somebody else peed in a tip jar, I think.
Woo! Okay. This is kind of interesting. So in '88, we were touring, and Dwight had his big hit, Buenas Noches. Streets of Bakersfield with Buck Owens.
Yeah. Okay.
Now Buck had come out of retirement, right? So he was kind of like the old guy, we'd get up there and we'd do Buck's little segment, Tiger by the Tail. We do these, like a little medley, a Buck medley.
Yeah.
And so we're playing this, we're in Oklahoma City, and it was Hick Boil Fest at Oklahoma City. And we were playing like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And I think Willie was there too. Okay. We only did probably with Buck on that tour in '88. I think there was only like 24 dates that he ended up coming out on, and there were always bigger dates, right? And so we're doing this thing, and Buck gets up there, and he's just like, he gets up there, and each time he got up there, he'd get better and better.
How old is he roughly at this time?
Well, that time, I think it was late 70s, maybe early 80s.
Okay. He's
Yeah, but he still has the thing. He still can play, and he still can sing.
Yeah, he's just moving pretty slow.
Yeah, but he's like every time he's getting up there, he's getting sharper and sharper. There isn't like, it's not like he's he should consider retiring. No, he had a thing. He still was doing it. And to the point, I think Dwight even kind of took note of it, kind of like, whoa, I better kind of start upping my ante here. But anyway, we're playing this hick broil in Oklahoma City. And so Buck's up there, I got a tiger by the tail is playing sweet. And this woman, like, sits there and she just flashes her titties. And Buck was like, whoa.
On the mic, like he breaks the tune.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Dude, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, all good. All good.
All right, brother.
All right, that was my talk with Taras Prodaniuk. Taras is one of my favorite people. It's always great to hang with him and catch up. Always fun to nerd out on bass with someone who's coming from a different place than me. That's what I like. I really like talking to him because we're coming from kind of different places with the music we're engaged with and all that stuff. Music we're a part of, I think, is a better way of saying it. But it's still great. It's still great to talk to people about what they're hearing and what they're into. I always really like talking about process, specifically in the studio and other things related to career. Learning someone else's process always kind of helps inform my own a little bit, and I always feel like I can take something away from hearing someone else's story about their process that I can, maybe choose to implement in my own. So that's always a good time for me, and it was great to hear Taras's. So, that was my talk. A great time, and that's all I got, folks. That's all I got for this one. I will catch you on the next one in a minute.